introduction or how the operation of the TLAudio M4. It is in room 033, but before we begin, I am going to take us for a little trip into 032. Push. Alright, I've already taken the liberty of setting up a microphone and a sound source, and that microphone, if we follow along, is plugged into a mic panel in the studio, and it happens to be plugged into number 16. Also take notice that right below it to the right are the AVM Q points, which should be hooked up to this guy, right? Remember, when you're using the AVM Q, when you first fire it on, it's a smart thing to hit the recall button and then hit this trim or mute button, because in recall mode all volumes will zero out. At which point, once you've done that, activate the Q send from the control room by hitting the 15-16 button, turning that up slightly. You can pan it out left and right. I would personally suggest that you zero these guys out by pushing them to 12 o'clock, so the bass, the treble, and the master are all at noon, so that your talent has someplace to go with them. Okay? Let the good times roll. So let's go into the control room. Walking into the control room, you want to turn on the entire system. How does that happen? Well, we come into the ISO rack and we turn on the Atlas Sound power strip. Check to see if you have power going into your power supply for the TLAudio. If you don't see that light on, that means the console is off, so you will need to turn that on as well. Okay? In here, the speakers are connected to that main power supply, so you will want to turn them on. Right channel, left channel, and now we can take a seat behind the console. Alright, so I'm going to, I'm going to knock the camera over. I'm going to log in. There we go. And while that's running, first thing that I probably need to consider is, how do I get that microphone to come through the console? Well, on this console, you should take notice that there is no phantom on 1 through 20. If you don't see it above the patch bay, you need to see it above the console, which is there as well. Alright? So what does that mean? Well, it means I've plugged my microphone into number 16. You should have noticed that the microphone that I had chosen was an Audio-Technica 4050, which is a condenser. So it does require phantom. Well, if there's no phantom on 1 through 20, where am I going to get my phantom from? Well, I'm going to come to my patch bay and I'm going to make a patch from mic lines from Studio 16, where I have the microphone plugged in, and I'm going to patch that over to number 21. Okay? From 16 to 21. And now, at my console, I can expect to have my microphone show up on channel 21. So here's channel 21, right? What do I need to do? Well, basically I will just need to bring up the trim ever so slightly, and because I'm me and not somebody else, I am also going to use my metering in Pro Tools to tell me if I've got decent level or not. So I'm going to go ahead and start up Pro Tools and start off a brand new session. My session parameters, 24-bit 48K is fine. Actually, it's overkill for what we need for this demonstration, but it's fine. I'm going to use my I/O settings for 033 TLAudio. And OK. What shall I name my session and where shall it go? Well, it's going to go to the temp drive, and I'm going to name it Working with the TL. Okay. Make myself a brand new mono audio track. We'll name it iPod. Has an input of what? 1 currently, and an output of 1 and 2. I'm going to change this. Why should I change it? Well, my console has technically direct outs. There are no buses on this console, so you need to take advantage of the direct outs for it. So if my microphone exists on 21, I'm going to think that I should have an input of 21. So over in Pro Tools land, I'm going to select input of 21. Its output, I can have it show up anywhere else on the console. I'm going to choose, just for sake of being crazy, I'm going to choose output 16. Okay, at which point if I put my track into record, I should be seeing some signal getting into Pro Tools, right? So at the top of my channel path, I'm going to adjust the trim, right, so that I have decent signal coming into Pro Tools. Okay. There it is. I'm content with the levels getting into Pro Tools. What can I do here besides that? Well, I have a pad that's available to me, a 30 dB pad, which will attenuate my signal. And I have a phase reverse, but it's a single microphone. Do I need to worry about phase? No. There's also a low-cut filter, but it just so happens that I applied the filter on the microphone. But if you wanted to, you could actually throw that in here. Okay. The next section is an EQ section. I'm going to stay away from that for the time being. Underneath that, I have a on button for the EQ, very important. I can make the EQ be post insert if I so desired, and I can also turn on the insert return point. Another cute little feature. Underneath that, I have 4 auxes. The only 2 that can become Q sends, in my opinion, are the 1 and 2 because they have the pre-buttons associated with them. Underneath that, I have a green knob called track. If you want to think of this as anything similar to what you've encountered so far, you could consider this to be your channel fader, right? So if you turn it down, your signal going into Pro Tools should go down. If you turn it up, it should go up in Pro Tools. Here, okay? So I will show you Pro Tools over there, and here I am turning it down. Look at the signal go. And here I am turning it up, and look, goes up. Now when you typically come into this room, all these track knobs, channel faders, are sitting at their unity point. Typically when you're tracking, don't you usually set your channel fader, if these were channel faders, at the unity point? Of course you do. But these are not channel faders. These are monitor faders. So, do you notice that these guys are down, right? So on 21, my fader is down, but I'm still getting signal into Pro Tools. Isn't that just crazy? All right, so on the input side of things, 21 is my microphone channel. I told Pro Tools to kick it back where? To 16. 16, I need to come up and engage the line button. Pro Tools is kicking out a line signal, yes. It has all the same attributes that the other channel has. So we have a pad if we so desired, a phase reverse, a filter. We have our EQ section, EQ on. We can put the EQ to be post insert, and we can turn the insert point on and off. Here's my aux send section, starting with 1, 2, 3, and 4. 1 and 2 can become Q sends and pushed into pre. We have a track output. Are we actually trying to track what's coming from this channel? Well, it depends if we've done something to it and we want to keep it. Then we could actually push this back into Pro Tools and say, hey, now with whatever we've added from the channel or through its insert point, now EQ or the insert, we can actually retract that back into Pro Tools by just letting it happen. We have our pan, mute, PFL, and here's my actual monitor fader. So I'm going to go ahead and raise up my monitor fader. I'm going to bring my master faders up to unity, and then I'm going to start to turn up my control room volume. Lovely, right? So, signal's working, right? How about that QSend stuff? Well, with the QSend, all I have to do is come to my monitor channel, and I'm going to engage my first two aux ends. I'm going to take number one, which I know is going to be my left headphone feed, and number two, my right headphone feed. I'm going to make those equal for the time being because it's just a single signal that if they're in their headphones, they wanted to hear it as mono, I need equal amounts. So Q sends, Q pans don't really exist because I have two discrete controls. Q masters, I turn those up to like 1 or 2 o'clock. I should be seeing signal in my AN16i, yes I do, and I should also be seeing it in the central station here as well. Look at that, life is good. It might be just too much because I'm pegging out every once in a while. So I'm going to take back my individual sends on the channel. Okay, how about talkback? Should I desire to talk back to my talent, I need to engage the microphone. Talkback mic, here's its gain control. And I can talk to aux 1 and 2 by means of pressing these two buttons. Be very cautious. These guys latch. So as soon as you are done talking, make sure you disengage them or your talent will continue to hear you. Alright? So that concludes probably what you would need to pull off for your lab practical and satisfy making things happen. This is taking advantage of this console as a split console, but I also want to show you another methodology of actually tracking and setting up a Q mix on this console. Okay, so I'm going to quickly zero everything out and get rid of those. I can leave my aux masters up, disengage the line input for 16. All right, so the microphone and the source have not changed yet, but I'm going to take advantage of channel 21 all by itself. Craziness, okay? So the microphone is still coming into 21 by means of my patch that I've made, right? I had it plugged into 16 in the studio, but right now it's cross-patched over to 21. Why? Because there's no phantom on 1 through 20. I need phantom power, so it is being cross-patched to 21, right? All right, so on 21, I'm going to grab myself 2 more patch cables, and I'm going to take advantage of the insert send, and I'm going to pump that straight into my Pro Tools input. And I'm going to say, let's use 21 as the input, and then out of Pro Tools 21, I'm going to bring it back onto the insert return for 21. Okay? Over in Pro Tools land, I need to reassign the output to be output 21. So input of 21, output of 21. My insert, send, and returns on channel 21 are going into input and output of Pro Tools 21. So on my console, all I need to do is activate that insert point, right? At which point Pro Tools has now been inserted into the console on the insert points. So imagine that the microphone comes in, we're giving it level up here, preamp, trim, right? Phase filter EQ, right? Insert, send, insert, return, at which point that is where I place the multi-track recorder, Pro Tools in this case. So my insert, send, and return are Pro Tools. It's coming back in, and now I can take advantage of what? Well, if we had buses and things, a routing matrix, we could take advantage of that, but this console does not have it. So we are jumping all the way down to monitor input, monitor fader now, right? I told you that these guys down here are always monitor faders. So if I bring that guy up, I can bring up my main faders. And listen to that. I'm hearing signal again, right? What about my Q mix? Well, the Q mix is still achieved by turning up the aux sends, right? Engaging the pre buttons so that they become Q sends. So Q sends, the two of them combined can generate a Q pan if you want to look at it that way. They go to my Q masters. From the Q masters, they hit my AN16i, my central station. I know that I'm getting a signal into their headphones. What if I want to adjust their headphone mix versus my controller mix? Easy on this board. All I have to do is engage these PFL buttons for my aux masters, and I hear what technically is going into their headphones. So when they say, hey, I want to hear this more in my left ear than my right, I just turn up aux send 1 and I hear the change. Okay? If they say it's too quiet, can I turn it up? I can either come to the discrete channels and turn those up equally, right? If they're saying I need a particular instrument to be heard more, or if they think that the overall level is too quiet for themselves, I can actually come to the masters and turn those up equally, and it will increase the overall level of everything coming into their headphones. All right? So why in the world would I have to take advantage of putting Pro Tools on the insert versus, say, splitting the console up half and half? Not that it might ever happen in this room, but let's say you have more than 12 microphones plugged into the studio out there, at which point you can't split the board in half anymore. So you would have to consider this as an option. There is another one, but I'm not going to get into it. There you go. That's working with the TL. Hope you enjoyed it.